I'm Essence.
I'm Emily.
And...
Episode 9.
Yes, we did it!
One away from double digits.
Hell yeah.
I love that.
Happy Pride still.
Continues to be Happy Pride.
Yes. The happiest of prides.
It can sound celebratory. It could sound threatening. Any of those things.
We will have a happy pride. Or else. Yeah. So it is Sunday. We're also recording early-ish. I mean, we were aiming for Thursdays to record, but...
We're at least not recording on a Monday.
The same day that we need to post it. Well, let's get into it, I guess.
Alright. Start with our game?
Yeah.
Alright. Work wife. Work Overlord, work Nemesis.
You get 3 characters, you have to choose where they go.
My mom did point out that we were using the word fictional incorrectly.
Well, like weeks ago, we stopped saying that. Because I realized it too.
I realized I said it last episode.
Oh, yeah, girl.
My bad.
Don't say fictional.
Yeah. Anybody not in our day-to-day life.
Yeah.
Not in our circle.
Until we get famous.
Correct.
Then we're coming for everyone.
It's full on Bravo for everyone.
Okay.
So I went first last time.
Yeah, so it's my... See? I do remember.
Good job, babe.
Yeah. Okay. I did not think about this in advance.
Oh, a musical number.
Yeah. I'm going with commercial people.
Ooh, okay.
Okay, so these are who you get.
Okay.
Flo.
From Progressive?
Yes.
Okay. Not a sponsor?
No. Unless you want to be. Mr. Clean.
Okay.
But specifically the version of Mr. Clean in that one commercial where he's like dancing. Like sexy Mr. Clean. And the Education Connection girly that sings the song that's like, working for an hourly wage, I went to high school, didn't do great.
Okay.
From, I think it would have been around your freshman year of high school.
Okay.
Because I was in 8th grade, I remember. I watched Degrassi every day.
Okay.
During that summer, and that was on a lot.
We value education in this household.
Uh-huh.
Education Connection girl is going to be my work overlord.
Okay.
We value an educated woman.
Facts.
We want to put educated women in positions of power.
Literally.
And she's working hard to get that college degree.
Can't complain. Yeah.
So here we go. Put her in the overlord status. Am I getting the version of Flo that's like, she comes with like the boat and the RV and all of the items that she's trying to get me to insure? Like, do I have access, or is it like us in the storefront?
I did not think about it that detailed, so you can take your liberties with it.
I think I'm gonna make Mr. Clean my work wife because he's gonna ensure that my space is tidy.
So, okay, I don't want to have to clean.
And who are we but to put men in positions of servitude?
Honestly, you're right.
I'm gonna make Mr. Clean my work wife. Have him clean up the office space. And I guess Flo's gonna be my nemesis. She exudes toxic positivity to me.
Valid.
And I don't think I can handle that.
Yeah, every day. Yeah, that's too much.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll keep the commercial theme going. The Flex Seal guy.
Okay, here's the thing. We grew up in different places, and so you need to be picking like the major brands, and I don't remember the Flex Seal guy.
It's the guy that is able to make a boat out of chicken wire.
I've never seen that in my life.
Fine. All right. You know Slap Chop?
We watch different TV channels. Pick the mainstream.
Those are the mainstream.
Like OxyClean. Like,
listen, the people are gonna know the Slap Chop guy.
I'm sure, but I'm not one of those people.
Ew. Okay.
Should I be picking just based on like these ideas?
Okay. You can pick based off the utility of the product.
Okay. You know what? Sometimes in life, you have to make a decision with very little information, and you know what we do? Mm-hmm. We adapt.
Okay. So the Slap Chop.
Okay.
You take like
what we have, but different.
Kind of. Yeah.
But I know the device.
Okay. So round-ish thing with a bunch of blades, and you slap it, and it dices everything.
Okay.
Okay. Slap the Scrub Daddy.
Okay.
And
is there like am I using Scrub Daddy as like the character?
No,
because I've never seen a Scrub Daddy commercial.
You're just judging the utility.
Okay.
So which of these items?
We have really taken creative liberties with this segment.
Well, I can't help it that you didn't know the commercials.
Okay. And
your neck fan.
Okay, so I'm choosing between a Scrub Daddy, a neck fan, and a Slap Chop.
Yeah.
Okay. Neck fan, work wife. keeps me together.
Okay.
All I could ask for. Not to collapse out in public, to be easy breezy beautiful, like
Cover girl.
Love.
Okay.
Slap chop and Flex Seal.
No, Scrub Daddy.
Scrub Daddy. Scrub Daddy, very wholesome, very hard worker. Seems chill though, very consistent. I like that. That's my word, Overlord.
Okay.
Because we love a consistent situation, doesn't complain, does what it does, knows its lane, and stays in it. We love. I feel like that's a theme in my things. I'm like, stay in your lane. Like, know what you're supposed to be doing. And then, what was the last one?
Slap Chop.
Slap Chop, I guess, is my nemesis. It's very chaotic and destructive, if not, like...
I feel like it's overstimulated.
It's a little much, you know? Like, not every... I think that's, like, the one... It should be like a consultant. You bring it in, like, when it's time, and it's not always time.
Everything needs to be diced.
Yes. Listen. This is, like... I'm so much, like... Like, my brain feels different than when we normally record.
Yeah.
On a Sunday afternoon, we are, like... glued to the couch, typically. After we do our little church and clean the house, then it's time to lay around.
On Morbid, they call it Morbid After Dark, is the times that they record at night, and they're always more unhinged and Morbid After Dark.
Oh, should we call it? Well, it's literally like 5 o'clock in the afternoon.
It's 5:27.
Talking shop on the weekends.
On the weekends.
Not safe for work.
Work-life balance is important, guys.
Work on it.
A good round.
Yeah.
A chaotic round.
Chaos.
A good round.
It's fine, we're hanging in there.
So we left last week's episode tasking ourselves with some research.
We did not task ourselves. We were excited to uplift the legacies of the people that came before us.
Well, I think we preach a lot about education, and I think one thing that becomes really important when we talk about education is that we don't know everything.
Oh.
That
Was that a question?
I think a lot of people assume, based on like the degrees that we hold, that like we possess a significant amount of knowledge.
In case nobody's told you, having a degree does not make you smart.
It does not.
Even having education in an area does not mean that you know a lot.
I think something important in our relationship is that we put a lot of focus on the educating one another and fun facts and just like new experiences.
We love to learn.
We do love to learn in this house.
Yeah.
So we did some research on some queer icons that both of us found like one person to really focus on for this week's episode and to talk about.
That happened.
I mean, I encourage you all to go do some research and find out about a story or a person that you might not know a lot about.
Yeah, there's like a lot of lists, and what I noticed was there's a lot of like people that recur, and I'm picking, like today, I'm talking about somebody that is on like all the lists. But I think that a side thing that I also do is make sure to go and look at people that are not always talked about, that are like kind of quieter or like more, got less publicity.
I found one list from the Museum of African American History that was all about African American queer activists that I thought was like super cool.
Yeah.
So a lot of like our national historic places or museums will often do lists around this time of year. It's a good time to go check out social media accounts of places that are tasked with like preserving our history.
Yeah.
Because they often tend to post a lot for special months.
Yeah, I think my research came from the Women's History Museum.
Awesome.
So I even cited my source on my note to myself.
Amazing. Would you like to go first?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm gonna sit back and listen.
Okay. So the person that I want to talk about and teach you more about, I guess, is Marsha P Johnson. As like many people know her because she was super active in like Stonewall and a pretty prominent activist during the 60s and 70s around a lot of the queer rights movements.
Her name is synonymous with Stonewall.
Yeah, pretty much. So like I know that there's like a lot of things, but there are things about her that have always just like drawn me to her. Honestly, like I haven't watched like a ton of documentaries or like done anything, so I was like, I don't really know like why I feel so like called to this woman besides like the impact that I know that she made on the world. So I wanted to do some more digging, and for the sake of respecting people's time, I did not do a whole dissertation, but I could have because she's a cool person. But one of my favorite things that I learned about her was that when people would ask what her middle name was, she would say "Pay it no mind." Like that was what, like that's what the P stood for.
She said, "Marsha, pay it no mind."
Yes,
Johnson?
literally. She said that it was kind of like a rhetorical, or like at least this was the interpretation, was that it was really supposed to be like that has nothing to do with anything, and a lot of people would like kind of try to ask around or dance around asking the questions of, like, what are you, kind of thing. And so she just, like,
she said, pay no mind.
Proactively was like, just leave it alone, like, leave me alone. So I thought that was funny. So she was born the 5. She had 7 siblings and was the 5th out of the 7.
Okay.
And her parents were, like, lower class, like, working people. And as soon as she turned 18 and, like, graduated, just, like, moved to New York. I think it's important to note that, like, she knew that she was trans and that she felt more comfortable in, like, women's clothing and that kind of thing when she was younger. But around, it said, like, at, like, 5 years old, she has memories of liking to, like, be in dresses and that kind of thing. But got, like, bullied and even, like, sexually assaulted as a kid. And so stopped dressing in that way and, like, stopped really, like, embodying who she was and kind of lived more, I'm assuming, maybe masculine.
Which I think is, like, I think it's a lot of people's, like, gender identity development, especially for people who are trans, that when trans people come out later in life, it is often not because they did not know who they were.
Right.
But it was because that they were not free to explore themselves or express themselves. That I think, like, most trans people that you talk to know very early on, and we know that, like, identity is developmentally appropriate at that age. But oftentimes it is not internal things that keep us from understanding our identity. It's the external things that actually, like, keep us from going out and deepening our sense of identity.
Yeah, because I feel like it's a very, like, it's challenging. I think I talked about this, like, on our last episode, of, like, finding your place, especially when it doesn't always feel, like, safe to do so. And so I think that people that, like, were able to work through all that adversity and still, like, make a name for themselves are just, like, badass.
Yeah.
I don't know, so I like that. She was also, like, raised in the church in the Episcopalian faith. Okay. So I think, hopefully, at that time, there was, like, still some of that thread of acceptance throughout the church, but she stayed a Christian throughout her life, which I thought was, like, cool, because as a queer Christian, it's not very common.
No.
I think it's, like, a pretty big, like, source of, I don't know, support, resilience, whatever you want to call it, for me. And so to see that, like, there were people that came before us that held on to their faith and, like, made it their own is cool. So she died at the age of 46. There's, like, some controversy around, like, what actually happened to her. She was found in the Hudson River. They tried to rule it a suicide.
There are a lot of some true crime podcasts about her death.
It's, like, it was not a suicide. Like,
no.
I don't think so. But she had 46 years on Earth. And what she said in an interview the year she died was that I was nobody from Nowheresville until I became a drag queen. And I, like, that just, like, resonated with me because I feel like for a lot of people you don't know, like, who you are, like, what you're meant to do or any of those things. And it feels very much like, what's the point? Like, why am I here? And then you go and have, like, an experience where it's like, oh, this is it. This is my calling. And I thought that captured, like, that experience. So there's a lot of, like, competing stories about what her role was in Stonewall, but it's very clear throughout everybody's reports that she was, like, in the mix. She wasn't actually there when the raids, like, began. When she arrived, like, on scene, they had already, like, been going. And I think a lot of the words and stuff around the people, especially her and Sylvia Rivera, who was 11, like, a Puerto Rican girl, and they were just, like, out there. And they were both unhoused because it was hard to find, like, you know, a job and make a livelihood. So she worked as a sex worker. But throughout that time in 1970, they founded Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries. The acronym was STAR, which was an organization dedicated to sheltering young trans individuals who were shunned by their families. And then they went on to found and start Star House, which was essentially like a homeless shelter specifically for trans youth. They could stay and feel safe. And it was really because they had experienced so much, like, not having a home and, like, not having a place to belong. They were, like, super passionate about making sure that that was not the case. And they had a rough start. Like, the first house was in the back of an abandoned truck, so it's, like, not even a house. Like, and then it moved into this, like, dilapidated building, which they tried to fix up, but they got evicted after only 8 months. And I just think, like I've heard of Star House. Like, that is a thing still. And I had made the association, but I think, like, being able to see, like, the humble beginnings, and, like, it did not, they used what they had to start a movement, not that they were, like, highly resourced or funded, but they just, like, knew that there was a need, and I think that's
as is
incredible.
Most of social services, is that the people who tend to start these organizations are the people who needed it, or the people who do need these services. That it is started from a place of necessity, not a place of, I guess, like, trying to prevent.
Well, I think it looks at the relationship between, like, philanthropic organizations and, like, grassroots movements, where, like, a lot of the movements start as grassroots, as, like, people that just, like, see a need and decide to fill it with, like, what they have.
Yeah, just like the Robots movie, see a need, fill a need.
But overall, she said that her ambition was to see gay people liberated and free, and to have equal rights that other people have in America. And I just thought, like, it's so simple.
Yeah.
Like, she's like, okay, this is the people, these are my, like, people, this is my community, and, like, this is what I want for them. And, like, that was that. And I just thought that was dope. She also never let her setbacks stop her advocacy. In the 70s, when she was also founding all this stuff and doing things, she experienced, like, several mental breakdowns and was in and out of psychiatric hospital. Because I read, like, another source that said that she really struggled with the duality of her identity, because she changed her name and everything, but still at times would kind of fall into her given name, which was Malcolm, and struggle with anger and just kind of navigating what it was like. And somebody described it, I don't claim to know that this is the case, but described it kind of like as like a schizophrenic kind of experience.
Pulled between two realities.
Yeah, and so, like, really struggled. I think it sounds more like dissociative to me, but who am I?
Oh, it's a better language.
But, like, I think it really speaks to, like, the complexity of being able to, like, be struggling and still help others who are struggling. So that was, like, some of the things that I learned, and I wrote it so tiny. My little quote that I wanted to read. It says, history isn't something you look back at and say it was inevitable. It happens because people make decisions that are sometimes very impulsive and of the moment, but those moments are cumulative realities. And I think that really spoke to me, because a lot of times, like, sometimes we don't know what we're doing. Like, we know that things need to be done, but we don't know what. We don't have a plan. We don't have anything. We just, like, try. And I think if one of the biggest names in our community was like, you don't always have it figured out, you just kind of, like, bop around and hope for the best, then, like, that really helped encourage me to bop around and hope for the best. So that's Marsha. We haven't done, like, a thing yet, like, education, but I think there's still so much I want to learn, and I've also found there's a ton of documentaries and, like you said, like, true crime. So I want to definitely, like, learn more, but maybe we can talk about each of them, and then we'll talk about, like, the commonalities or, you know, whatever.
So I picked James Obergefell. Most people will recognize the name from the famous court case, Obergefell versus Hodges. So James was together with his partner, John, for 22 years.
Like, before this ever started.
So they were together 22 years in total.
Okay.
They started pursuing marriage equality in 2011.
Okay.
John ended up dying in 2013. His partner was diagnosed with ALS, and the progression of his disease is what actually prompted them to seek out ways to get married. Because they were living in the state of Ohio, and in Ohio, if you are not legally married in a marriage recognized by the state, you cannot be buried together, and your marriage will not be listed on the death certificate. So, with the progression of his illness, they wanted to be buried together, as spouses do, and they wanted their marriage to be recognized on the death certificate, because if they were not legally married, James would not have been listed as a surviving spouse on John's death certificate. And so in 2011, when the Defense of Marriage Act was overturned, John's illness had progressed to a level where they knew he was going to die pretty soon. He was bedridden at the time, and family and friends actually raised enough money for them to get on a medical private jet and fly to a state where gay marriage was legal, the closest state that they could, which was Maryland. John was not well enough to get off the plane, that they were married on the tarmac, and flew back to Ohio. You okay?
That's just devastating.
No, it's horrible. The things that, like, your ill husband, where you were trying to, like, spend your last months together in peace, you are not having to, like, orchestrate a medical flight.
And fight in court and, like, do all this.
So when they were married. They were married in Maryland, and because at that point, gay marriage was not a federal mandate, it was a state-by-state mandate. So they took their marriage license from Maryland and brought it back to Ohio and attempted to sue the state in order for the state to recognize their marriage as a legal marriage.
Oh, so that's how it...
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So, following the timeline, the Defense of Marriage Act is overturned within the court system. The marriage equality goes back to the state level. Some states are approving marriage equality, some states are not.
Mm-hmm.
At that time, in 2011, Ohio was not recognizing marriage equality. Maryland was.
I was a freshman in high school.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, in Ohio.
So.
And, like, this has happened. It's, like, bizarre.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, wild. So they come back from the trip. John's illness is continuing to progress. And the urgency to have the state of Ohio recognize their marriage becomes even more because his death is impending. So they filed a lawsuit to be recognized as spouses. They win that lawsuit with the state of Ohio, but the state of Ohio attempts to appeal it.
Jeez.
So basically at that point in time, a temporary restraining order was placed, and they said, the courts mandated and say, no, Jim needs to be listed as the spouse on the death certificate, that their marriage needs to be recognized. But with the appeal, if the courts sided with the state of Ohio, even if John died, they could go back and amend the death certificate and take Jim off of it.
That's disgusting.
3 months and 3 days after the lawsuit was filed, John died.
Mm.
So at that time, Jim was listed on the death certificate, but they continued to have to go to court and fight that. Jim essentially had to continue the fight in order to remain on the death certificate.
That's insane.
Yeah. So through a series of appeals, they eventually worked the lawsuit all the way to the federal level. So they're through the federal appellate court, and it eventually ends up at the Supreme Court. Jim said that the reason he continued to pursue the lawsuits and pursue it up to the federal level is he wanted the federal government to say that they mattered and that they existed. That, like, that was the whole onus of the lawsuit, was that they wanted the government to recognize that their marriage was legitimate and that their marriage actually existed. June 26th of 2015, the Supreme Court decided in favor of marriage equality. So at that point, it became no longer a state issue that there was a federal recognition of marriage equality. Since then, there have been attempts to overturn it. It continues to be on the precipice of being overturned throughout our lifetime, but Jim is now an LGBTQ plus activist. He's a board member of a nonprofit organization called Family Equality. He also co-funded a business called Equality Vines, which is a cause-based wine label that supports civil rights organizations. They said that he had a huge love for wine and was able to blend his activism into his passion for wine.
Wow.
So go check that out. He co-authored a book called Love Wins, which talks about, like, his journey of going all the way to the Supreme Court. And it said on his website that he also officiates a few weddings a year, that he takes the time to go and officiate weddings to be able to support couples in honor of his husband.
Oh. Thanks for doing that research.
I think a lot of people know the case. I don't think a lot of people understand why that case was so important to that individual.
Yeah,
and to that couple.
Well, ideally, do not have to have that same worry.
Yeah.
Because of, like, the sacrifices that he took, both, like, in the final days that he had, like, with Jim and also John. Jim is the one that is still
correct.
John, yes, okay. Yeah, like, I don't think it always comes together that, like, that's how he spent his final days with John.
The last 3 months of his husband's life, they've been fighting to make sure that their marriage would continue to be recognized after John was gone.
And then through his grief,
continued to fight. From 2013, they filed the lawsuit, to 2015. He spent 2 years of his life fighting in appellate courts to have the legitimacy of his marriage recognized.
Yeah. Like, I mean, people don't fight, like, parking tickets because the court system is so, like, a lot, you know? And I don't know, like, that's... I know, like, when we were in like November of be 24 now, when like after the last presidential election, and people were talking about that, like being back. I mean, I guess as if it was in the past. Like we're still, like you said, like talking about that. And I remember like I have a chronic illness, and like the fear of if something were to happen to me, and like my family is thousands of miles away, like if they took that away, like what would happen to me without you?
Yeah. I think it continues to like blow my mind as we talk about like some of these dates, that if we go back to like the longest legal marriage of a queer couple, it's
what,
11 years. That like we know that like there are queer relationships that have much longer tenure than that.
Yeah.
But you're only able to celebrate your 11th wedding anniversary. And like that, just I think like the gratefulness that I have for like that couple, because like without them we wouldn't be able to be legally married. Like I'm sure there's somebody else that would have stepped up and fought the fight, but I feel grateful that they did.
Well, and they did it like when we were kids.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, truthfully, before either of us even knew.
Yeah.
The sacrifices of people like blows my mind.
Yeah.
So, what do we learn, or what do we want to take from? So we have like 2 people that cared more about the cause than about the like logistics or like the potential consequences. I know Marsha, as I was like reading through, like she had been like arrested in and out. I mean, like she was like she was not thriving in terms of living her best life, and obviously in this situation like not either. And I think it's a rough time to be alive in America for sure, and like to be different. And I think for me it's encouraging and like a reminder that like there's never really a convenient time to change the world.
I think I am in both of these individuals impressed by the bravery that it takes to like stand up to a system, because like I think both for Jim and for Marsha, they knew they were going to be visible, and they knew the risk that they were taking being a visible figure fighting for marginalized groups. And I think there is an incredible level of bravery that comes with like being willing to be the voice of change.
Yeah.
And being willing to be like the poster child. Like, I mean, how many times have people talked about like Obergefell, like, and they have smeared his name?
I don't even know.
You willingly put your last name out there to say like, I am willing for this to be the landmark case that decides like marriage equality.
Yeah.
Not just for like everyone, but because it was important to him.
Like these are just 2 people that were like, this is my family, like this is who I love, and like this is,
well, it's what he said, that he wanted people to recognize that they mattered and that they existed. That like it wasn't to say like take rights away from other people, or it wasn't about making somebody like feel bad or like punishing somebody else.
No politics, really.
It's the acknowledgement of the humanity.
It's like the saying thing that people say, like, you die twice. The first time is like when you take your last breath, and the other one's the last time somebody says your name. And it's like there were just these 2 people that like decided that it was going to be them. It's insane.
Yeah.
I think that's the other thing that I really like about that quote that I read at the end, is like, I don't think they knew what they were. I don't think that anybody sets out to do that, like to make like history.
Yeah.
That, like when you're doing it, you're not thinking that. You're thinking like, this is the right thing to do, or like this is what I feel like I need to do for whatever reason. And then like we look back and we're like, oh my god, like you changed everything. But they didn't know that then.
I think like it's as simple as like you wanted to be on your husband's death certificate. Like,
which is wild that was even like
right, or like you wanted to ensure that like when it was your time to leave, you could be buried next to him.
Yeah.
It's like horrible.
Yeah.
That like that's even damn.
I was like, I'm trying not to point it out, but like you are emo.
Yeah,
I mean, this is emotional. Like,
I think it brings up the conversations that you and I had when we were talking about getting engaged at one point. Is like, are we even getting to decide the timeline of our marriage?
Yeah.
Or is, like, the fear that we're not gonna have that, or, like, that could be taken away at some point, gonna, like, drive the timeline of our relationship?
Well,
and I think it's things, like, nobody ever thinks about or talks about.
Well, like, I know with clients, like, that was a big conversation around then, like, because we work with so many, like, queer people, that they were like, I'm trying to decide, like, do we get married even though I'm not ready yet?
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't even know, like, what to say. It's just, like, I don't understand how we got to a place where hatred and, like, bigotry were so much bigger than, like, humanity. Your desire to control other people's behavior became bigger than your desire to, like, let everyone live out however many years on Earth they have, like, finding the best versions of themselves.
Well, I think you have people who can't find secure housing, you have people who can't find a job, or, like, just even a safe place to, like, spend the night, people who can't get buried next to their person, like, all for an identity they didn't pick.
Yeah, or, like, I mean, even, like, a lot of sex workers and, like, the overlap between, like, the LGBTQ plus community and sex workers is, like, pretty significant. Same with, like, homelessness and even substance abuse. And people are like, well, look, like, see, there's something wrong with them. And I'm like, no, there's something wrong with the world. That, like, they can't just be. Like, do you think that people want to do that?
Mm-hmm.
But people want to wake up, they want to live their life, they want to go to sleep, and, like, that's it. And they want to do that with the people that they love, and, like, I don't understand the desire to police that and then use, like, public resources to try and defend that is wild to me. And I think that's, like, it's so complex, like, during this month. Like, I think it doesn't have to be, right? Like, there is an option to, like, just celebrate and, like, enjoy. And I think the past couple of years, like, that's where we've been.
Yeah.
Like, we went and we had fun and we saw drag shows and, like, all the things that make being a part of this community, like, beautiful and fun and exciting. And I think, like, this year I'm having more complex emotions because 100%. The legacies of people are being threatened into a way that, like, it's causing harm.
Yeah.
Undoing the work that these people have done is harmful, not only to, like, them and, like, the significance and the marks that they made on Earth, but also to everybody else that's still here that benefited from their sacrifice.
People often talk that, like, queer joy is a form of resistance. I think education is also a form of resistance. That if we don't understand the lives of the people who, like, have gotten us to where we are today, that I think it gets talked about a lot during this month, especially about, like, why L is the first part of the acronym.
Yeah.
Because L wasn't always the first part of the acronym. That was changed because
After
of
AIDS.
Because of how the lesbian community showed up for the gay community during the AIDS epidemic. That there are so many spaces where if we don't understand how we're all interconnected and how we all rely on each other to, like, continue to make change, like, it's very easy to lose sight of that. Because I think, like, the best tactic is to divide.
Yeah.
That, like, if we lose sight of how we all benefit and impact each other in the way that, like, one person creates this, like, ripple effect, then that division succeeds because, like, we are all better by witnessing other people also attempt to be better.
Well, and, like, division does not always mean, like, cohesion. Or, wow, the opposite. The opposite of division is not, like, cohesion, like, we all get along and, like, everybody agrees everything. And I think, like, that is a very black and white approach to a very, like, complex reality, which is, like, if we really lean into individuality, the likelihood that we're going to agree, like, period, across ideas and everything is going to go down. But, like, that is not inherently threatening when you are seeking out an appreciation for differences. It's exciting.
Yeah.
And I think without the people that were brave enough to, like, say, like, no, we matter and, like, this is, we belong and deserve to be, like, seen and witnessed and, like, embraced and celebrated and all the things, I don't know that I would think that way. I remember very specifically at church one time, I was watching Jose, like, sing. And there was, like, this moment, I remember watching people sing, because I just, artsy girly, would be like, oh, I'm so jealous, like, it's not fair, like, why can't I do that? Like, it would be very egocentric and witnessing the greatness of people's voices and all that. I remember being in awe of them and just being like, oh, like, you are so you in this moment. Like, it took my breath away to, like, watch and just experience. And I remember noticing that was the first time I was, like, around people and I saw the things that were different from them and me and was like, that is so cool. It was like a switch flipped, because, like, I haven't really, like, had that old pattern, like, come back. It's just been, like, this new way of experiencing the world where I'm like, what do they have to offer? Like, what's different about them? Like, what can I, like, see from them or, like, learn or whatever? Like, I was just, like, so excited to see the world through other people's eyes. And I feel like that would not have happened without people that, like, saw the point of celebrating differences.
Well, I think, like, in these two people that we have, like, picked today, they cared about other people. That, like, there was a level, I think there was a level of selfishness and a level of selflessness in both of their, like, decision-making process. That, like, the selfishness piece is, like, I want this for me. That, like, this is going to benefit me in some way, or, like, this is going to, like, improve my quality of life. And a selflessness to, like you said, sacrifice the last 3 months of time with his husband, or, like, to have an unending grieving process for 2 years while you attempt to, like, address these things, or to put yourself in harm's way, to make yourself visible, like Marsha did. That there is a level of, this is going to benefit me and I'm initiating these decisions because it's benefiting me, and the selflessness to say, like, I'm going to make myself visible, I'm going to make myself a target, I'm going to put my name out there for the greater benefit of, like, this thing is not just about me.
Yeah. I had, like, a reaction to you saying selfishness, because I struggle with that word. Like, I struggle with that, like, term and that idea of, like, looking out for yourself being selfish. And yeah, that's, like, a complete thought, period. But I think, like, I guess another way, because I'm imagining that, like, if I'm having a reaction to that, then, like, people listening may also have a reaction to that. And we, I think, have actually, like, talked about this before privately about, like, how we use that. But I think there has to be a level of, like, self-awareness and self-worth that comes into creating change, because you have to see the fight as worth it. And I think, like, that is what sets them apart from maybe other people that existed during their time, is, like, they were like, it is worth it. It is worth causing a scene. It is worth, like, ruffling feathers and, like, making it a big deal. And it's not because I think I'm so much better, or because I want to, like, step on other people on the way up, or, like, any of those things. It was just like, I matter too. And I think if that's where everybody got, right? Like, if we all got to a place where we were able to say, like, my story deserves to be told, and I deserve a seat at the table because I do, because I'm a human that matters. And if we could all just stop debating that, the world would be so much better.
Yeah. I think the systemic lens that, like, we often talk about is about being able to see your role in things, and also the impact you have the ability to make when you are willing to take the risk.
Yeah.
And I think, like, we talk about this all the time, a system disruptor, like, somebody who comes in and, like, disrupts the way that things have been done, is a very difficult thing to hold. Like, that is, it is a hard thing to be. And the people who take it on, I believe, are the people who, like, are able, like you said, to see the worth in it, and the people who have a good support system around them to fight the fight.
I think another, like, telling thing is that I don't think either of them really got to experience the benefit of the work that they were doing in the way that I feel they should have. Like, the outcome of fighting that long for marriage equality should have been that you got to enjoy your marriage. And the outcome of working that hard to create spaces, especially for queer people of color and trans women of color, should have been that you got to live your life surrounded by...
You got to be safe and enjoy the safety of those spaces.
And I think that's the part that is always... It's like, because you want them to, you know... But I think that is another element of selflessness, is that it was worth it even if they didn't get to enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is something that I admire and that I will aspire to forever, is like trying to create change even when it doesn't benefit me, because I know it benefits. And even if I know that I won't be here to like witness the fruits of my effort, like, would you still do it?
Yeah.
And I think that's, because it's a question that we all have to answer with our lives. It's just crazy that like,
yeah,
you can do a lot and not see it, but that doesn't mean it doesn't matter.
And I think it's the people who, I think especially for Jim, he's able to go live his life in some ways, and it's not the life that I think that they had envisioned, but he's still able to like continue to be a voice and use that, the experience that he gained of learning to navigate the system in a way that continues to push progress forward and ensures that like marriage equality stays and is not something that comes and goes based on whoever is in charge.
Word. I liked that. I like the like kind of like spontaneous, like we just talk about whatever episodes too, but I think like this was a different way to look at it. I wish I had made more notes. Even though I read a bunch, I forgot when we sat down.
Hopefully you guys liked it too.
Yeah, if not, well, skip and come back for 10. I don't know what to tell you.
Into our weekly report. If you're new here or you forgot the acronym, our report stands for what we're reading,
Eating,
playing,
obsessing over,
recommending,
and treating ourselves too.
Our weekly report. Alright, Queen, tell us about the book you're reading this week.
I finished a book, I forget who it's by, but it's called Survive the Night. It was kind of nuts, but like in a good way. It was about this girl whose best friend had been murdered, and she like gets into a car with somebody like to go home from college, and like struggles with kind of knowing if she can trust her own brain, essentially, because the person that she's with, she's like, are you the person that killed my best friend? Like, I can't really tell. So it's kind of like it's a mess in the mind. But it was a good, yeah. And then I started Lena Dunham's book, who I am obsessed with. If I could make a Mount Rushmore of the people that have like influenced me, like the women that have influenced me, she would be.
She's controversial.
Really?
Yes.
I can see why she's controversial. I like her a lot. And I met her through Girls. So I watched Girls, and I think like that was like very big for me and like my own self-acceptance journey. And that is what I like about her, is that she's very vulnerable with allowing herself to be seen. Like, does that mean that everything we like witness and see is like great and we stamp approval on it? Like, no, of course not.
Yeah.
Like, I think that speaks to what I was saying before, where I have an appreciation for individual differences that outweighs my discomfort with difference. And I think that's what I like about her. That's what I'm reading now. Not That Kind of Girl, I think, is the title.
My podcast this week has been about the Martha Moxley murders, which is, it's this wild case.
If you haven't heard of that,
out of Greenwich, Connecticut, I believe it happened in like the 80s. It involves the Kennedy family, RFK Jr.
Yeah.
It's important to distinguish.
I know, I always forget.
On a road trip back during Christmas time, we listened to like this one podcast where a guy did an incredible deep dive. We'll link it in the show notes because it's incredible. I think
it's a lot.
A great piece of journalism. But it was interesting to hear another person's perspective on it.
Yeah.
So yeah, the Martha Moxley murders.
We're very uplifting here.
Eating.
Well, last night we ordered Olive Garden.
It was good.
Yeah, Olive Garden, like, you have to be in the mood for it, but honestly, when you are, like, it hits.
I'm gonna shout out Tillamook strawberry ice cream. It's
Miss Girl, you have to shake it up, because I made that graphic of, like, our roundup, and it's gonna be repeating.
We got Peachy's Donuts. We love Peachy's. It's a local donut place. They make excellent, like, just their glazed donut is...
They're the Mennonites.
Yes, excellent glazed donuts.
Yeah. We used to be HelloFresh girlies, but now we're not, because we're taking a break. We do love HelloFresh. Like, we like what they stand for.
Shout out to their Pride marketing.
Their Pride marketing, if you haven't seen it,
A+.
and you're in the club, you need to go see it. But I am looking forward to this week, like, getting to experiment a little bit more.
We're gonna venture out, cook on our own. Yeah, I'm excited.
Stay tuned. I don't know that we did a lot of play this week.
We did, I think we went and saw some theater, which was
today. Yeah, we
great.
went to the Fringe Festival. If you're in Sarasota, then
It's over today.
I thought it was over.
Today was the last.
Okay, well, you missed it, but Sarasota has a very big, like, arts scene.
Yeah.
So, and we like theater and musicals and that kind of thing. So, yeah, we did see the play.
Support your
really
local
good.
Theater.
Seriously, like, it's
Support
one of the
arts.
It's one of the few arts that, like, is still here, that, like, started at the very beginning of humanity, basically, and, like, has continued to thrive, which is dope.
But we saw a show called Pep Rally, and
did they write that?
Mm-hmm.
It was. I would love for, like, a sequel or whatever. Funny.
He posted on Facebook that there is more to come from Pastor Chad.
Oh my god.
I think everyone left that theater being like, my face hurts from just how much
ridiculous.
everyone was laughing and smiling, and it was just ridiculousness. I think is whimsy is good. Whimsy is play.
We love whimsy. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know.
I don't know if I'm quite to obsessing yet, but the new season of Love Island is, I think, ridiculousness. I think we have episode 2 to watch. I think by that point I'll be obsessing.
So next week we'll lock in Love Island.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are you?
Wait, rewind for play. I have a different one. Last night our friend invited us to a sound bath, and I love a sound bath. If you've never done a sound bath, like, you should do it, especially if you're the type of person who likes to go to, like, yoga classes or, like, things like that, because you like the vibes, like, not the yoga part, but, like, the aesthetic of being in those spaces. You probably really like a sound bath. Yeah. And the thing that was really cool is, I don't really know the people that ran it, because it was our first time going to that location, but one of the people that was doing it, like, programmed the lights in the space to coordinate with the frequency.
He wrote a whole app
Yeah.
to take the specific frequencies of the sounds that his wife was playing and color code them to, like, the lights that are supposed to, like, be on the same wavelength.
Which is dope.
Yeah. Obsessing. We'll go back to obsessing.
Obsessing. I don't really know what I'm obsessing over. I've had a weird week. I'm obsessing over not having a weird week next week. I'm recommending go to a sound bath.
I'd recommend going to get ice cream after the sound bath with your friends.
Yeah, very grounding.
I think this was a good weekend of, like, friends and family. I recommend making plans, even though it's overwhelming. Get out of the house.
Especially when you don't want to do it.
Yeah.
You should
get out of the house, go see your friends, go see your family, or your chosen family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time, like, reflecting. Like I said, it's been kind of a weird week for me and my brain and all the things. But I spent a lot of time, like, in silence and, like, kind of, like, laying around. But, like, really, like, sitting there and kind of, like, trying to relax and, like, breathe and think through things. And I think what I realized is that I do reflect because my brain is constant chatter, but I don't always intentionally reflect on things. And I think making a space to, like, sit and just, like, exist and check in with yourself is actually helpful, unfortunately.
Treat yourself to intentional reflection.
Yeah. Treat yourself to a nap. That's what I want to do.
A nap.
Treat yourself to some therapy if you're feeling like you need that. I have this idea. I don't really know if we're going to do it, but I feel like if I say it, then maybe I'll feel more, like, compelled to start posting. In our house, we did this thing called Dessert O'Clock. We've been doing it essentially the entirety of the time we've lived together.
I think we're almost at, like, what, year 3?
4.
Oh, yeah.
So we have Dessert O'Clock every night around 9:30. Sometimes it varies depending on what time we eat dinner, but it's basically where us and our dog just have dessert. But we have, like, I feel like, interesting desserts. So my thought is that I was thinking about, like, making a reel or posting or something.
Yeah.
Our Dessert O'Clock check-ins. So stay tuned to see if we do that. Yeah.
What's yours?
Yeah.
Drop it in
That
the
would be fun. Yeah, tell us.
Yeah. Put it in the comments.
Yeah.
But thanks for talking shop with us.
Yeah, we'll see you next time.
Bye!
Ooh.